Serious? Hey Reddit, what was your thank god I looked at the contract moment? I signed up for a gym membership on a whim and got sketched out when they initially charged me $250 instead of only the $90 for the month. I went home and legit didn't sleep because I was so mad I went through with it. I called and asked the next day to see if I could cancel, and almost everyone I spoke to said either no, it was impossible, or only if I moved to an area that didn't have the gym. I checked the contract and you could cancel within the first 2 weeks, and I was only 3 days into the contract. You bet your ass I cancelled so fast. Edit, Lifetime Fitness. Landlord agreed to let me move out a month early since he wanted to lease the apartment to someone else. We had to sign new paperwork to let me out of the original lease and to make me agree to be out by an earlier date. I knew he was a recently convicted forger, so I made sure to read what I was signing. He'd added the condition that if anything fell through with the new tenant that I would still be on the hook for rent after I moved out. I called him out on it, and he said, oh yeah, I just added that part to protect myself. Then he stole my deposit. I still need to take him to court for that. Duck you, John. Edit, okay. You all convinced me. I've got a few more months before the statute of limitations is up. Just left him one final voicemail and will proceed with a civil case if I don't get my check by the end of this week. Went to buy a new phone for $200. The employee told me they were closing soon and asked if I could come back the next day to sign the paperwork. The $200 mysteriously changed to $300 while the document was sitting in a desk overnight. Called them out on it and got it from somewhere else. You should really consider buying your phones unlocked. Sure, you have to fork over more money at the start, but whoever you're signing that contract with is going to get the full price out of you one way or another. Plus, if you buy unlocked, there's no carrier bullshit loaded on the phone. My wife and I were at a car dealership buying our first car. The dealership was offering special no interest financing for recent college grads, and we were using that to finance the car. The finance guy presented us with two options: or 3-year payment plan and a 5-year payment plan. The whole time he made it sound like the zero interest applied to both, and so we went for the 5-year plan to get a lower payment. Finance guy tries to get us to sign without reading the paperwork, but we weren't having that. Come to find out, the longer payment plan didn't qualify for the no interest deal, and we were getting charged 6.5%, which is a hell of a lot more than zero. We got pissy and threatened to walk out after we realized what they were trying to pull and got them to come down on the price. I know they've pulled that on other recent grads who don't read the paperwork and just sign. Some workplace that demanded at least 4 years of employment, or else I would have had to pay for those 4 years as you would pay for a course in case of earlier quitting. My last restaurant job had a non-competition clause in the new handbook. I pointed it out to co-workers. Few signed, and it was revised in a week. Non-compete for a restaurant job? What mysterious secrets could they have that no one else does? It's to keep them from quitting. You're more likely to put up with bullshit if you're not allowed to get another job elsewhere. Went to pick up my car from the dealership, and it said by signing the paperwork it gave them permission to lend my information to third parties. Nope. What did you do? It was my first time getting my car fixed there, but they wouldn't release the vehicle to me if I didn't sign. I watched them delete my contact information from their system, took my keys and left. When I bought my car new 3 years ago, the finance department processed and had me sign paperwork at a certain price. Then they called me 3 days later and told me that their lender fell through and I would actually have to pay an additional $100 a month. I brought in the paperwork with the price I signed for and the keys. Told them they would stick to the contract or they could have their car back with the additional mileage. Apparently this is a fairly common practice at car dealerships. Beware. I had taken some helicopter flying lessons and was considering switching careers to that. So I found a flight school and applied for a student loan. Fannie Mae was the only one that would cover it. And when I got the final paperwork, the interest rate was higher than they told me over the phone, and the total payment to them was going to be well over $200,000. So I cancelled and didn't go to flight school. Edit. Sorry everybody. I meant Sally Mae. Buying my house. Husband signed the paperwork and I went in later that day to sign. I started to read through the loan application. Mortgage lender said, "What are you doing? You don't have to read it. Your husband already signed it." I was like, "No, I want to make sure it is what I want." Loan was at $250,000 at 25%. Yeah, right. Didn't sign it and got out of there. Mortgage guy said he was going to take me to court. I said go ahead, it would be cheaper than what he wanted me to sign. Took over all the mortgage stuff from the non-mortgage guy. Was a friend of a high school friend of my husband. Edit just talked to my husband. The man who tried to sell us on this mortgage got busted and arrested. Lost everything and had to have his parents bail him out. Also the mortgage lender we did go through for our FHA loan. He also got arrested for selling bad loans. Do your research. Viewed this great flat and was ready to hand over a deposit when I decided that I should actually read the rules they sent me once over again. I had read the one they gave me when I viewed the place and it was a bit strict. And in general I thought it was silly to have written rules when you're paying that much. But again, nothing I couldn't handle. Thank Odin I checked. The rules listed in the email were completely different and included gems like if you wish to bring a guest to the house, you must put forth a request in writing at least 1 week prior and must be approved by all members of the flat. There will be no guests allowed after 10 PM. Absolutely no guests staying over. Any guest that comes over will require a $20 fee to go towards water usage for toilets. I'm like, you want me to pay over $1,000 a month for my own private room? And not be able to invite people to come over without jumping through ridiculous hoops? Noped out real quick. There were a few other ridiculous things, but that took the buns. We were in the process of selling our business. My wife's car was registered under business. We sat down with our lawyer to discuss what is included in the sale, equipment, supplies, etc., and we clearly told him the car is not included in the sale. Well, guess what? We received the typed up contract from our lawyer and he had added the car along with other things. Thank God we read it and had it removed before signing it and sending to buyer's lawyer. Was sent a freelance contract for a job offer in the media industry. I was a graduate at the time with 2 years experience. Was offered £6.50 hourly pay and with the expectation that I must be available to work 37.5 hours per week. I had to use my own car for business purposes, but couldn't claim expenses for fuel mileage. And above all, the contract demanded full rights for the company to use any creative works I produced within 2 years before the start date of the position. I didn't accept the job. Mine wasn't really extreme, but my GF and I were shopping for houses and we were checking out a townhouse style condominium. The price was within our budget and the monthly maintenance fees were average for the area. It was an open house event hosted by a retailer, so the property's annual expenses were included in a pamphlet. I found that on top of the regular monthly maintenance fees, around $350, there was an additional expense of $800 every 6 months. I asked why there was an additional expense if there were already regular fees. She responded that the extra $1,600 per year was used to keep the fees low. I responded that the fees are average for the area and many places in the same neighborhood are already lower. Long story short, it was a nice house but we didn't pursue it further. I'm on board with the idea of condo fees if they cover things that I would normally pay for like heat, water, snow removal, garden care etc, and if needed additional expenses for major upgrades like new roofs or doors, windows. But expecting 12 houses in the row complex to each kick in a $1,600 bonus every year without specific accountability isn't something that interests me. I went to a reasonably well advertised jewelry store to pick up an engagement ring, knowing that I wanted it to be a surprise, and that she would want to pick out her own ring in due time. I made sure that the ring would be returnable for full price, and even for a full refund from that store when I bought it for about $900. After the proposal, my then fiancée found a ring she liked better at a different jeweler, so I went to return the ring. When I said I wanted to return the ring, the clerk said no problem. Just sign this and we'll get you sorted out. I read the small paper. And it stated something very close to I now confirm this sale to be a final sale. And cannot be refunded or returned for any reason. I read it. Pen in hand. Looked at her. And said, why would I sign that? She took the slip back. Got her manager. And I was able to get the full amount returned via the same way I paid. On my debit card. For those interested. It was a People's Jewelers in Vancouver. I noticed a lot of contracts have the following clause. You can cancel when your contract is up for renewal. But if you fail to do so, your contract renews for another year. I set several reminders to prevent that auto-renew thing from kicking in. I once had a subscription to a service I no longer wanted that was going to auto-renew on a Sunday. I log in to cancel the day before and see the auto-renew had already gone through. Turned out they round back to the closest business day if the auto-renew is scheduled to happen on a weekend holiday. I raised hell and got a refund, but come on. That's just shady. Us Marines. I was enlisting for a program that's 5 years of active duty, age 19. Get the contract and it says 8 years. Nobody had ever mentioned anything about that. I ask and the recruiters point out that it's an overall 8-year contract. But only 5 active. And the other 3 years I can serve in the reserves or in the inactive ready reserve. They explain that means you still are eligible for service on paper. But have no monthly or annual obligation except keeping your address updated. And that all it means is if World War III breaks out and they're drafting guys anyway, you'll come back in at your old occupation and rank. So I signed. Note this was pre-9/11 when we had no major wars going on. 9/11 happens. I do 2 tours in Iraq while on active duty. And 6 months before my 8 years is up I get involuntarily recalled and sent to Afghanistan for 6 months. I just bought a used car and my wife and I had to bring our newborn. She hadn't pooped all day and I knew from her doing it the day earlier that a monster sheet was brewing. Well, it happened in the finance office and she sheet all over me. Now just before this we talked about the $250 cancellation option. How I didn't want it. How I sold cars in my past. We had a good conversation about it. Well, this jabroni give my wife a digital paper to sign to reject it and zooms in to help her sign but is really obscuring the fact he had her sign for it. After I emerged from the bathroom, covered in watered down sheet, I read the whole long form and caught it. He pretended not to know what the charge was. Then he said it will take hours to manually redo. I told him to get to it. It didn't take hours. I didn't know about the signature until after I got home because he gave me a digital copy of that on a USB drive. When I got home and looked over the digital part of the contract, I was floored to see and put together what happened. This Ashat saw us struggling with our new baby and thought he could steal $250 from us to pad the back end. A lease I once had said. The landlord agrees. At the renter's expense. To blah blah, with the blah blah being a list of deep cleaning services to be completed at the end of the lease. Likely many hundreds of dollars worth. First time renter here. Moved out of uni res to get my own place so I could take my family cat. Found a nice little apartment for cheap downtown. Intended to move in with a roommate or 2 to split the cost. Close friends of mine. The landlord didn't speak English very well. So although he insisted, oh yeah, everything good. Everything okay. I wasn't sure he understood what I wanted. When he brought out the contract, it said in writing that pets were not allowed. And the cost would increase for more people living there. I pointed it out to him. But he retorted to the effect of, I use this contract for all tenants. Those rules don't apply to you. Bull. I told him I wasn't signing unless he rewrote the contract. But he refused. Saying he wasn't going to waste time pandering to paranoid people. I offered to write the contract myself and was baffled that he agreed to it. So I wrote up my own contract with super lenient conditions. Making sure to protect my own ass. Had a lawyer look at it and notarize it. And now I live with my cat and roommates at the original cost. We were young, my friend signed for a pre-owned Audi and came over to my house. Said it was like $300ish a month, and in his glove box I read the paperwork and tell him, you know this says $550 a month, right? He was clueless, but thankfully it was over a weekend, so Monday morning he went back and caused a scene to give the car back without penalty. My wife and I were 3 days away from signing paperwork to buy a condo, and they sent us the latest, and we noticed that they changed the interest rate by a tiny amount. Like 0.2%. They said the change was because they reran our credit. So they altered the interest to reflect our current credit rating. That left a bad taste in our mouth, so we said no thanks and walked away. The next week my company got bought out and they moved us out of state. If we would have signed, we would have had to either immediately sell or quit my job. I went to sign up at Snap Fitness and it said they'd charge a $50 gym enhancement fee every year. They said it would go to equipment upgrades. I told them that's what my monthly fee should be going to. They refused to remove the fee. So I bailed and went to Anytime Fitness. They immediately proceeded to pull the same sheet. Plus the key fob to get in was going to cost me $70. You can buy a pack of 100 of them for like $20 on Amazon. They, too, refused to budge. So I backed out. Eventually I moved to an apartment with an on-site gym. So that worked out for the better. Ad company I worked for bought by another. The handover included new contracts for all staff with the new owners. I went through every word. And glad I did. As one clause gave the new owners rights over any IP I had ever had. Egg if I had a patent from before I even worked for the previous company. I was signing away all rights to it to the new owners without any compensation. This included if they have moved into a new area of business. So, if I suddenly got successful in another field outside of work time and nothing to do with their business, they were allowed to just start a new field of endeavor and take everything from me. I'm extra glad I did check. Because they later proved to be deceitful and dishonest. Kept on changing our salary payments. Super contributions. Accidentally forgetting to pay us. All sorts of stupid stuff. Recently, I just started a new job and the employee agreement said I wasn't eligible for overtime. But it was something I 100% confirmed I was eligible for. And it was in my job offer letter. I pointed it out on the spot and HR crossed it out and initialed it. She claimed she must have grabbed the wrong agreement by mistake. I hope there wasn't anything else in the agreement that didn't pertain to me. It did have a forced arbitration clause that I'm still unhappy about, but this job is just a stepping stone for me. We were getting ready to move from the US Midwest to one of the US Island territories back in 2000. We had 5 cell phones that I was going to have to cancel and I was looking at some hefty cancellation fees. Then I remembered a clause. Not in the contract. But that was printed on our bill a month or two earlier. Previously they had not charged per minute rates for calls if they were automatically forwarded from the cell number to another number. I had mine set up to transfer to my landline. The notice had 2 important points. First, they would now charge for the duration of the call even if it was forwarded. Second, if I didn't agree to those terms, I could terminate the contract with no penalties. Remembering that, I saw that saved me almost $1,000 in termination fees. I was prepared for a hassle when I contacted them. But the termination went smoothly. Quite a while ago I bought an extended warranty for something from Walmart. When I got home I found out they put in an act of God clause that basically made sure they'd never have to pay up. 2 years ago I went to buy a used car. I really liked it. Test drove it twice. And went in for the paperwork. They ran the numbers and gave me the paperwork to review. I busted out my phone and started doing the math on it using one of those websites that calculates auto financing and interest for you. I did the math with the website and on my own 3 separate times while they stared me down. The numbers didn't add up. Turns out, they had it set up that payments wouldn't officially kick in until 60 months but would still be accruing interest that entire time. Screw that. That and the fact that I caught the salesman lying to me on all kinds of things like this unused space behind the engine is specifically so if you're in a crash, there will be room for it so it won't hit you. No. Jackass. It's a low-end model with a tiny engine. Don't try and sell this as a safety feature. Ugh. Anyways. Walked out from them and got a lot of passive-aggressive and even threatening texts in the following days. Screw them.